Okay, this is our Google Hangout. We're here to discuss the Tesla Q2 2016 earnings report and call. We have several members from Tesla Motors Club, investors, and we're going to go ahead and share some thoughts on the report and the call. We might have some time also to discuss the Gigafactory opening last Friday. A few of us were able to be there in person. And yeah, and if you're wanting to join in and as a participant, go ahead and you can message us. I left a link in the comment section also on Tesla Motors Club. I'm hoping that that link works to participate, but we'll try to get you on as well. So as people are getting on right now to view this, this also will be recorded for the future. But I'll go ahead and do a quick summary, and then we'll kind of hit different sections. Give our thoughts on Tesla's report. But basically, I would kind of divide up the report into two sections. One is kind of the long term, and one is the short term. The short term is all about this year, and we're talking about Model S production, Model X production deliveries. We're talking about gross margin. We're talking about guidance for the second half of this year, about 50,000 cars. And all of this would be kind of considered, I think, short term kind of concerns. And I would say probably about 25 to 30% of the call, maybe up to 40% was short term. And then the second part is more the long-term issues, right? And we're talking about Model 3 production, or when they're going to start, getting ready for the Model 3 with equipment, production line. We're talking about full autonomy. We're talking about Tesla Energy, the stationary storage. We're talking about future products like the minibus, the semi-truck, Model Y, etc. And all of this falls under kind of long-term stuff, right? And so actually that's probably a little bit more interesting. The short-term actually kind of is interesting for us stockholders because it can help us kind of maybe expect or kind of anticipate where there could be a possible, movement in stock prices over the next, several months. So I think that's helpful. But what we'll do is we'll go ahead and let's start with the short term, and then we'll head into the long term and just hit each topic one at a time. I'll share some thoughts. You guys can share some thoughts, and we'll take some questions from people as well. So for short term, the big kind of overview of the short term kind of guidance Tesla is they reaffirmed the 50,000 production and deliveries for the second half. And that's pretty much it, I mean, I don't know if gross margins, a little bit, they actually lowered it from 30% around Model S and 25% Model X, and he lowered it a bit, but then Elon in the call said, oh, I think we can hit it. So it's kind of like just a whatever point for me. But yeah, I think the big question is, can they really hit the 50,000, One concern is demand. And I've actually been a person that's actually had demand concerns for quite a while, probably for the past year and a half. And I've been kind of a person that says I think they're kind of matching production and demand. It's not just production problems, but I think demand is not as growing as fast as what some people would like. And Elon actually commented that he thinks demand is, right at the production level of almost around 2,000 a month. And that's what I think that's actually what I expected. Demand and production has been pretty equal for quite a bit. That's my my theory. And I think there are risks that Tesla's gonna not meet the 50,000 by the end of the year. But I think they could. It's kind of, to me, it's a toss-up. They might be a few thousand short, or they could be a few thousand over. But I think Tesla's reached a point where they're kind of matching. The Model X has had so many production issues, not production issues, but yeah, quality issues, that the demand for Model X, it's hard to tell what it is right now because everyone seems to be waiting, for the Model X to be a better quality. So, are we going to see Model S, at 60,000 and Model X at 60,000 eventually, maybe for next year, possibly. That's my kind of rough guess. I think right now we're looking at probably Model S at 60. Or maybe, 55 to 60, and Model X at a run rate of maybe 40 right now, 1,000 per year at a run rate. So we're looking at, I think hopefully reaching our guidance of 80,000. But What do you guys take? What's your guys' takes on the short term production guidance, next 2 quarters, etc.?
I'd like to see them just plain. They need to perform. There's an awful lot of talk. I'm 70 years old. I'm tired of waiting for money.
Mm-hmm.
I like to say that Model S went through a very similar ramp period where there were a lot of people that held their deposits for a long time, surprisingly long time. Some of it is just, when you have a deposit for a vehicle, that you've had for 2 or 3 years, it's not like you have to get it like the next 2 months. And so a lot of people have held off. The other one is that X is just starting to ship overseas, so we really don't know what demand really looks like once people realize that the X is available in their country. So I think.
Hold on one second. We've got an echo here, so I don't know. Someone I think might be not echoing. You might have to mute yours, or actually, I'm gonna mute your. You can mute your. Yeah, there's someone echoing. I'm gonna turn you. I'm gonna mute. Oh, it was Roger. Roger, is you. I muted your thing. If you want to speak, just unmute yourself and you can speak. Yeah. So, anyways, go ahead, Bill.
Right. So, for example, if you look at the Model X design, it very much is a vehicle built for China. They're just starting there. So we really don't know. 2016 may very well be the final rise of the where Model X really becomes something. And just like S took a few quarters to actually hit that stride.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think also like last quarter earnings report, they seem pretty bullish on the growth of demand. This quarter, if you look at the wording, it's not as bullish. Also, Elon was saying how they had double-digit, I think, or the CFO was saying they had double-digit growth in U.S. and Asia, but what that means is they did not have double-digit growth in the Europe. So basically, the Model S orders, for last quarter, basically were either flat or single-digit for Europe. And they blamed it on not having inventory cars, the refreshed cars, or not having refreshed Model S cars in the stores. Yeah, I don't know. That just seems like an excuse to me.
Well, I suspect exchange rates have not been that great.
That's true.
And so I think there's a whole bunch of factors, as well as the 60s, and people understanding of the 60s and what that means has not necessarily filtered through everywhere. I'm just saying is that we're right at a difficult period to gauge. I don't believe that we're necessarily at the end of S demand growth.
Yeah, I mean, actually, I was rereading past earnings reports, and it's interesting. Elon Musk, actually, I think it was at the end of 2012 or early 2013, he was saying he thinks they would reach peak demand. He actually said the words peak demand for the Model S within, I think it was 3 or 4 years after the release of the Model S. So we're talking about maybe around 2016 or so. Elon was expecting peak demand. Now he's not going to say that now because he wants to keep on kind of giving forward guidance and stuff. But yeah, I think I think we'll see marginal growth, with the S and hopefully X, and hopefully we can get 60,000 next year. That's 120,000. But that's best case in my opinion.
There is one other question. When we talk about demand, there's always the issue of production versus demand, right? And when they start backing off on growth estimates, it's not necessarily because the demand's not there. There is a limit to how much Panasonic can supply out of Japan. And we don't know what that limit is, but I doubt we can get, for example, 50% growth out of Osaka.
Yeah, I don't know. I think, in my opinion, like Tesla's been forecasting 50% growth at least, and they've made their arrangements with Panasonic. To me, I don't know.
But that includes Gigafactory. So in other words, if you look at 2017, they'll be able to make that demand growth, but with Gigafactory online. But you can't do that with Osaka's production.
Yeah, I mean, I just haven't seen, much evidence that we're production constrained with Panasonic cells right now at this point. Earlier on we were, 2 years ago or so, but the past year I don't see that. You guys have any other comments before we move on from short term?
Hi guys, it's Flux. I've
Hey,
got
Flex.
no video, but I have audio. Can you hear me?
Nice. You have a blinking Tesla as your icon.
Oh, it's blinking? Wow, that's
As you
Yeah.
talk. Yeah.
oh, all right. Well, sorry to I hope that's okay. Yeah, no, I think that I generally fall somewhere sort of in the middle on the, I mean, I think it was a very um sort of par for the course status quo conference call. I don't think there were many surprises, positive or negative, and I think that sort of seems to be the theme that Jason, the new CFO, has instilled, which is probably a good one. Capital discipline and financial discipline. I mean, I think this sort of gangbusters demand growth of yesteryear on S is definitely waned, and I think that you couldn't really argue that we're going to just see explode. I mean, I think a lot about, do they need how many S's and X's need to be sold to get them where they need to be to make the Model 3 happen, and I think that's really what counts more than more than sort of projection bumping up 1% or 2 in the out years. But I don't know, for the I guess we're talking, is this the short-term topic we're talking about, short-term?
Yeah, just
Yeah.
the next two
So I mean,
quarters.
I don't know. I see us, to use a vintage DaveT term, I see us sort of range bound a bit. I think for a while as we await some of these sort of exciting product announcements. But I think new product launches for Tesla in recent times have been less of a massive pop than they have in the past. I mean, we announcing a minibus and a semi. I think people just say, Elon's like, this is going to be huge, and you know, people discount that a little bit now. I think, given what the track record of execution is, good and bad. But so I don't know. I don't really think we're gonna crater, and I don't think we're gonna see all-time highs anytime, tomorrow either. So I think the options sellers probably made money this week. That's what I think.
Yeah, actually, this earnings stock reaction in the post aftermarket, it's like it's been the most sedated,
Completely.
movement in the history
I
of
know.
like
Well,
Tesla, like ever. It seems like it's crazy.
well,
Within
Wall
just like
Street's
two
all at the
points or something.
beach, So yeah, I mean, but even with that, it's like, no, it absolutely had. It's like some normal company all of a sudden. Like, what
Hmm.
happened? Why are we not up and down 10% with algorithms? Maybe they're at the beach too. I don't know.
Actually, Dave, can you speak to free cash flow?
Well, actually, the one thing actually I got out of the whole earnings report and call was the impact of Jason Wheeler, the CFO. Noticeably, Tesla is much more disciplined financially. I mean, it comes across in almost everything. I mean, CapEx has gone down significantly. I think they're rethinking how they spend money. Before they were just spending like crazy, and now they're actually like being really more disciplined. Their OpEx, their operating expenses, which is basically like the selling, general, admin, SGA, and the R&D, they've been pretty stable and growing just a little bit, which is pretty impressive. Um, I think there's been some sacrifice, like service centers are like long wait times and all this stuff, and so I think it's the impact of Jason Wheeler, and I think there's been a decent. I think the reason why the stock didn't crater actually this time, and I think in most instances it probably would have dipped a lot more than it did, is because I think for a lot of the people watching like the shorts especially, they're looking at these financial, like, how much are they spending per quarter and how much are they losing, what's their cash position, etc. And you look at the numbers and you're like, it's actually not that bad right now. It's like they didn't they always lose money, of course, because they're spending for Model 3 and Gigafactory, etc.
Do you
But
think Wheeler has won telling people like they introduced their new metric, the the cash flow from core operations, all that kind of little bit of magic. Do you think the street has bought into their perspective on that?
I think actually it's actually working. I mean, for me as a person who actually I'm reading all the numbers, like I spend more time on the numbers than actually the shareholder letter. It actually I'm like, whoa, actually these numbers actually don't look that bad, and that's what surprised me about this quarter actually.
Yeah, I think that. Go ahead, man.
No, you go.
Yeah, just I think his. I mean, I love Deepak. I mean, I thought his voice was very soothing, counterpoint to Elon, but I think Jason sort of speaks the analyst talk, maybe even a little bit more precisely, and they like that. Things that reassure analysts and reassure. I mean, he comes from this world, so he knows what they care about. I mean, and I think that's Tesla is no longer a startup. I mean, it's just not. I think anybody that writes that Tesla Motors is a startup they are a fast growth maturing company. They're not a mature company that is kicking off dividends because they shouldn't be, but they're definitely out of the startup phase. So it takes.
No, I completely disagree. I'm sorry.
Okay. Well, all right, maybe not.
The vehicle production side might be considered more mature, but I think they're still kind of like you say, the startup phase. We're still well within the 2/3 of the execution of the original master plan, right?
Sure.
But the Tesla Energy side is on clear startup, like ground phases, like
yeah, they
all
have
investment, no revenue, right?
They have business lines that are startup within the company, but I mean, so does IBM, but that's different than being question whether they're going to going concern or not anymore. I mean, we're beyond the phase where people think, Tesla's might or might not succeed, at all. I mean, the only existential threat to Tesla, I think, at this point would be if they royally screwed up the Model 3, but I don't think that's even. I think every single person in the company, top down, understands that is by far the focus of the whole company right now. So.
But financially, like everything converges on right now on Model 3. Tesla Energy is potentially 50% of the company in a very short period of time, right? So you're talking like, it just in terms of like thinking about how the metrics of the company in terms of finances, investment, and all that kind of stuff, it still looks a lot more like a startup company than a
I mean, I guess so. I just mean from the standpoint of maturing process improvements in sales and production and in cash flow even just cash management. Those they're not acting like a drunken spending like a drunken sailor, anymore. And that's the hallmark of a maturing company. I didn't say they're, a mature company, but on a curve,
Yeah.
Sure.
on a plot. Say you might argue they're 20% of the way to a mature company. I might argue they're, 35% of the way there or something. I mean, I certainly don't think they're 80% of the way there.
Okay. Anyways, let's refocus back to our topic of short term, next 2 quarters. If you guys don't have anything else, we're gonna move on. I think generally, the whole uncertainty of Tesla's kind of short term has kind of been a little demystified. I mean, it's basically they're trying to produce 2,000 cars a week, try to deliver 2,000 cars about, and it looks pretty like they might miss by a few thousand, they might go over a few thousand, who knows, but it doesn't seem that significant in the bigger picture. It could impact cash flow, definitely, especially if they can, beat the targets, which could impact the stock price, which I admit, is substantial. But anyways, yeah. We'll move on because for the sake of time, we've got a ton of other topics. For the long-term issues, they covered quite a few. And I want to save some time for the Gigafactory too. But on Model 3, they talked about how they have the stamping and then the paint center capacity ready. They're going to work on the body and assembly by the end of this year. Get started at least, which is encouraging. And then Elon gives this whole weird kind of thing of He doesn't know when they're really going to start production, and yeah, I don't know. I'm in the camp is, Elon said that he thinks 100 to 200,000 by by the end of next year, Model 3s. I'm in the camp that I'd be very happy if they produced even 50,000 Model 3s. Personally, I think the ramp is gonna hit some issues, just like the S did, just like the X did, just like basically, any new product Tesla, comes out with. Elon is very optimistic at times, internal aspirational stretch goals, that he shares publicly. But in reality, yeah, as long as they could do, 20 to 50,000, I'd be pretty happy actually. I think that could set up, 2018 as a very, big year. What are you guys' thoughts on the Model 3 and what was shared today?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to know what targets they have the capability to hit and how much it's shifted given the reservation numbers, and how, I mean, and how much can be accelerated. I think everything they can accelerate, they probably are. I don't know. It's hard to know what wouldn't they have done if reservations had been, say, half what they are. So, I don't know. I mean, but you toured the Gigafactory too, Dave. I mean, it looks like a space that can crank out cells. It needs a lot more tooling, I thought. It was a lot less. I mean, I guess I was expecting to see more there than we did, but then again, if we had more in there, we probably couldn't have gone in. It would have been clean rooms.
Were you able to do the tour, Adam?
Yeah, I was, and I was
cool.
trying to catch up with you, and
Yeah.
I just didn't in the chaos of
it's
the
crazy.
night there. Yeah, but anyway, so yeah, I mean, I thought that it looked like a place that could make a lot of cool batteries, but as you say, Dave, I think it's not just cells in executing a whole car off the assembly line at speed, and I don't see any reason to believe that the ramp will be exponential out of the gate, but probably slower as well. So, but I think that most of the market kind of discounts a little bit Elon's pie in the sky projections anymore. And that's probably healthy. But I think it's also healthy for a CEO to set really high goals for his company and his employees, and and for the market. I mean, so
I'm not sure it's even discounting. Like I think we suffered through a series of attacks that basically said that they couldn't do it at all. Like they expected zero. Like it's not that they think that they will be slow. It's that they can't deliver the Model 3 at all in 2017. And so the question is, what's priced in?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I think the first 3 that rolls off the line and the first person that takes delivery is going to surprise people no matter when it is. And I don't know. It's just who knows what's perfectly priced in right now in terms of.
Yeah, I had this other thought that I think actually a slow Model 3 ramp could be very beneficial to Tesla. The reason being is if they could, come out with the Model 3 like, maybe end of third quarter by, end of September next year, and then they can produce, 5 to 10,000 in Q4 or something, right? If they can have or if they can even do it earlier, send out some, but if they can have a 6-month type of slow ramp, what that will allow them to do is fix a lot of any big issues, problems, because you don't want them to ramp up to like 200,000-300,000 cars and then go, oh shoot, man, we have to recall the whole powertrain / whatever, the whole entire cars. That's going to be crazy, right? You want them to, once they start ramping to a couple 100,000, you want the quality of the vehicle to be very, very good, And I think it's actually in the bigger picture better if they have a slower first 6-month ramp, and then they ramp up like crazy, rather than just trying to produce 200,000 cars by the end of 2017.
Right.
Yeah, that sounds.
Can I get in on this?
Go ahead. Yeah, jump in.
Yeah. So exponential would just be, he always makes the point that at the beginning, exponential, it looks like a slow ramp. It will be a slow ramp at the beginning, and then it gets faster and faster. And he's saying it's unpredictable. Changing, getting delayed a month will make it look like your ramp's much slower, and it'll move out production further out. So I think it's doable, and I agree. In the third quarter and fourth quarter of next year, they're not going to produce a lot of cars. I don't think you're right. They need to get it right. They can't afford to recall 400,000 cars, that's for sure. So they got to get the first ones right. So.
Yeah. David, what's your user handle? I don't think I've met you before.
Oh, I'm 3 Victoria.
3 Victoria.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. On Gigafactory, since we have Adam and Bill, FluxCap and techmaven here, they went to the tour. I was able to go to the tour. Were any of you other guys able to go on the tour?
No.
No. Okay. Yeah. Maybe we'll share a few thoughts because I think it could be helpful in interpreting this earnings call. My impression of the Gigafactory tour was it was much more impressive than the Fremont factory for me. Because the Fremont factory, you kind of expect kind of it to be big and for it to be making cars, For the Gigafactory, it's kind of like you don't expect it to be so huge and to be just making batteries. It's kind of like, what is this? Why is it so huge? So I came out of it thinking like, oh my gosh, Tesla is serious about changing the world. Like you need this type of massive. It's really massive. Like you need this massive, just not just building, but like filled with production in order to produce enough cars that make a dent in the world, And I was the next day I was leaving my hotel and I ran across a Tesla executive, one of the top handful, and I was commenting on the Gigafactory and how big it was and stuff. And he's like, yeah, that's Elon's vision, it's that big, and it's really like normal people I don't think would probably have the guts to go for something like that, but it really takes someone who's kind of like a little bit like, I wouldn't say a little bit like crazy ambitious, I
call him a madman.
Yeah, exactly. To not just conceive, but actually, follow through with this crazy Gigafactory. On the flip side, though, the Gigafactory, I think personally, I think it's going to take a while to ramp, and the reason being is, they're trying to make the first cells by the end of this year, but it's going to take a lot of testing and validation, and who knows if they'll make that. What I got from the Gigafactory is there's going to be another section of the Gigafactory that makes stationary storage cells. And so one of the reasons why I think Tesla Energy stationary storage is taking so long to ramp is because they're waiting for the Gigafactory cells to put into basically all these power packs and power walls. I think everything they're sending out right now is version 1.0. Even more, it's basically with Samsung, cells, or not Samsung, probably with Panasonic cells, maybe with Samsung, I don't know. But they're just kind of waiting. Panasonic, okay. But they're waiting until they can produce their own cells, right? And that's going to be the real ramp. But my concern about once they're able to produce the cells is the power pack installed, it's like a nightmare. Like I've talked to some people who are trying to get the power pack installed, or power wall installed, and they've had like 3 or 4 months of all these like different teams, Tesla and the installer, the inverter team, the permits, and it's like dozens and dozens of email correspondences, and it's like a bureaucratic nightmare to get a power wall installed right now. It's just you need a new inverter. My friend he needed a solar for each of his panels. He needed like all these installers to come by, and it's like a construction project just to install a power wall, And so it's something like that. Is like it's not that easy to ramp. It's not just like sending out some equipment. And then also the power. Yeah, it shouldn't. And that's why they're trying to get Solar City too. That's the rationale. And with power pack, it's like people think, oh, just send out the power pack and the utilities can make all this like stationary storage to buffer the grid. But it's not that easy either. It's like all of these installations of power packs, they need design, they need validation, they need like permits, they need like all sorts. It needs like a sales team to. It's like each project is many months and many teams of people on it to get it executed, right? And so that's why I think even though they can start ramping the Gigafactory next year, And but I think you're going to be limited in some ways because the power pack and the power wall are highly bureaucratic things to install and get done, you know. But that's probably why they want Solar City too, because Solar City has a lot of utility experience and also residential as well. So you're gonna have a ton of these Solar City people move into, you know, basically prepping the stationary storage, but also like integrating everything, you know. They're integrated sales team, install teams, you know. That's what's gonna happen over the next year, but it's gonna take time. It's not gonna just be like in Q1.
So Dave and I talked about this actually before our tour, and just the mind-boggling numbers of Tesla Energy is not priced in at all. But also the mind-boggling numbers go towards how do you make that actually happen. I mean, it's one thing to get a whole bunch of people saying I'm interested. It's another thing to actually go through the entire sales process and install. And my +1 ticket for the Gigafactory is actually from a person who works for a power company. And so we had quite a few discussions about what would mean. And obviously power companies are historically very boring for a reason, very slow-moving companies. And so it's not something you just go and say, oh, let's go do these things. And so that's why I think it was really important why Tesla went ahead and did announce Tesla Energy and did all this kind of work in 2014. And all this time, it seemingly nothing has happened. But it's one of those things where it takes a really long time to go through the sales cycle, to get people comfortable, to work through all these issues. And if you're going to want to ship gigawatt hours worth of stationary storage shortly, you're going to have to pay this ramp period. And so they did without the Gigafactory cells. And so the price points aren't great today using Panasonic cells. But very quickly, the Gigafactory cells at a very modest, even say 15 or 20% drop from where they are now, the demand looks the tip of the triangle is very, very wide, right? So once you can prove it that it works in Hawaii, the sheer amount of people in the Caribbean or in Africa or in Asia that would want this just start going in start measuring in fractions of terawatt hours, and so it's quite phenomenal, and I think none of it is priced into the stock.
I would tend to agree with that because I think that it's wise for an analyst to not really price in Tesla Energy heavily right now because frankly management hasn't. I mean, they were asked point blank this conference call, last conference call, how many millions? I mean, the 500 million number they gave was how many conference calls ago was that? I mean, forever ago, I think. And they didn't answer it again on this call. So I think that it could be huge, but I think, Dave, your point about them needing not just production, but a sales team, a service team, whatever that looks like, a design team that, co-designs these things, probably permitting, expediting, a team that reaches out to jurisdictions on Tesla's behalf to, make sure regulations are that regulatory bodies understand the safety risks of this stuff, of having a generator and high voltage energy storage in residential areas. There's a lot of stuff, and Tesla is in lean mode right now. They're in focus on Model 3, so they don't have a lot of headcount bodies to throw at ramping this. Even if they did have the 2170 cells or whatever they're called fully online at the Gigafactory. I think they will, and I think I had thought about this earlier, part of the no-brainer that everybody laughed at for Elon's Solar City combination is they're buying headcount that is tailor-made to sell Tesla Energy. And it wouldn't make sense, I think, to sort of staff that up and spend a lot of SG&A now on the sort of in-house Tesla side when everyone there has to be focused on making the Model 3 the best car the world has ever seen, which, so I mean, I think it should be priced in kind of when there's there. And I didn't, I mean, were you guys what did you think about the little Tesla Energy area that we saw? I mean, it seemed like one robot and a few guys and a few power packs. It didn't seem like, you know, massive world-changing energy product
Yeah,
factory.
actually, it's interesting. I was on a factory tour, like, wasn't that too long? It wasn't that long ago. It was like maybe 6 to 12 months ago. I forget when, but they had a Tesla energy section on the Fremont factory tour as well. Back then, before they
Hmm.
moved to the Gigafactory, and it was about maybe a third of the size, a third to half of the size that what you saw at the factory tour, the
Okay.
Tesla energy assembly section. So basically, I mean, and they did 25 megawatt hour of storage in Q1. They said a power pack and
Okay.
power wall
Right.
in their Q1 earnings report.
Yeah.
So basically, it's basically a pilot project. You know, they're basically
Right.
putting together things. A lot of it is by hand right now, and
Yeah.
they're not making a ton of stuff. But it's actually
Well,
probably double or triple what they had in Fremont factory, actually.
Well,
it's
that's
very
cool.
interesting to note that we did not see cell to module assembly. That's part of their secret sauce, and it is not was not on the tour.
That's true.
All the really critical parts were not on the tour. There was no anode production, there was no cell assembly, right?
Yep.
Into the actual cells. Uh, None of that was on the tour. A lot of that is very proprietary to either Panasonic, and certainly from Tesla's perspective, the assembly of the cells into packs, into the pack modules, is very proprietary to Tesla. That was not on the tour, and that
Yep.
would probably be one of the more impressive things to see, because even from the old National Geographic visit the factory thing, they had the automated picker that went and tested the cells and assembled the cells. That we saw a little glimpse of that machinery that was at the Fremont factory. We saw none of it at the Gigafactory.
Right.
But I want to add one more thing, is that they had confirmed in this call that they're going to make inverters.
Yeah,
And when
Yes,
Tesla
that
Energy
was
was
huge, actually.
talked about way back when they were first before we knew the terms Powerwall and Power Pack, I had always thought that the inverter side would be actually a bigger contribution, especially since you look at the car has a massive inverter inside of it. Um, and so if you look at the costs of the inverters available for solar and therefore and also for stationary storage, I thought the Tesla could provide, if nothing else, the ability to drive down costs. And so for them to just straight out and say inverter, well, inverter is the brains of the outfit. And I've been quite disappointed with SolarEdge, actually, which has been the only inverter that's been available to install a Powerwall. And they just haven't been many available. It's convoluted. SolarEdge themselves couldn't tell me what you actually need to get. The costs are very high. And so I'm not surprised right now that it's very, very difficult to get a Powerwall installed, if nothing more than the SolarEdge storage product is just not ready. And it's not moving
Yep.
fast enough for Tesla. And
Um,
it's not driving the price down.
I really agree with that sentiment, and I think that it falls in line with a couple discussions I actually had last weekend with various people over the differences between Tesla and everyone else in the way that they do business with a customer and what they present. Tesla does not like to deliver a product that is not easy to use, that is not understandable and easily adoptable. And I mean, there's enough hurdles in just doing new stuff. You need to make it simple. And wow, we're going on a trip here on somebody's camera. Um, so, but yeah, and I think that applying that same culture and outlook and sort of way of doing things to Tesla Energy is critical, and that encompasses sort of the whole supply chain, or not supply chain, almost like a demand chain of buying, or the whole buying process. I mean, there are service centers, there are sales centers for Tesla products, there are people out there doing advocacy at the national and state level. There are people talking to regulators. I mean, all of that infrastructure has been built, and is necessary for adoption of a new complex product like this. And I think when you think about companies like GM or Nissan or other people that have tried EVs, whether we believe they're sort of legitimate or not, they have none of that supporting infrastructure, in human capital, in cultural capital, in just effort and time and money. And for that reason, I think, honestly, I'm more excited today about the combination of SolarCity and Tesla than I was, and I know that's not the topic of du jour here, but than I was when I first heard it. When I first heard it, I was like, well, of course, but why now? But maybe it is to just kickstart this, this Tesla Energy into the next level with a ready-made staff that already essentially knows each other. And corporate integration is never easy, but I mean, the boards share a vision, and that's going to be crucial, I think, as
Yeah,
Tesla Energy.
I think it makes sense if, the Gigafactory is going to ramp starting, let's say Q1 of next year.
Right.
They're going to have a bunch of power walls and power packs they're able to sell them, that it makes sense to have SolarCity integrated, before that, or at least to acquire them, so that you have the manpower, the teams for both utility and residential, and you can start, doing some really cool stuff. It seems like Tesla's already working on some of these things, like the inverter for, the solar system, residential.
Yeah.
It seems like they're already, going ahead with this stuff.
Yeah, I would imagine there's a team that's working on it. It sounds like they are. I mean, I'm excited about what are the SolarCity products that we're going to hear about. I mean, I know that the acquisition of Solivo and their advanced panel tech, but I don't know much about it. People have said solar shingles as a sort of the quote beautiful solar solution. I'm not sure what that would look like, but it sounds neat. And having been in the construction world myself for a while, off and on, I know how frustrating it is when people go to get permits and deal with local and jurisdictional governments. They just think, why can't I just do this thing? Even, putting in a patio or an addition or something relatively simple. And so when a company can help them through that and help them understand that, it adds so much value to that process. And there's differentiation there, I think, that Tesla and SolarCity can bring that competitors can't. So I think that's a good thing.
All right, so let's move on from Model 3 and Tesla Energy, unless someone wants to butt in with any other comments. The one surprising kind of comment from Elon was he was saying their focuses for Tesla right now are the Model 3, which I expected, but also he talked about full autonomy as like their second major focus. It seems like he's trying to gather around the whole company around these two things, Model 3 and full autonomy. And so, just the whole thing of, them being, he always talks in like mysterious, ways sometimes, but says they have something under development that will blow people's minds, etc. What do you guys think it is?
I mean, I think just Bill and I had the chance to sit in with some of the guys from from TMC Connect, who engineer, and some of the guys who are hacking on the Tesla code underneath our cars, and even just seeing some of the diagnostic screens and things. Looking at the terms that the internal sort of terms for Autopilot tiles and the way that works, and all the things that the car is thinking about all the time when it's processing just mountains of data on Autopilot, feeding it back to the mothership, and then improving sort of the hive mind in real time. It's amazing. I can't even, I mean, our cars, first of all, the fact that our car has every component talk to each other and then back to Tesla as needed, with detailed logging, is unprecedented. I mean, no other car does that. And then when you layer on top of that the ability of a computer to learn from human behavior, and all the really, really smart people that have been working on this for a while, I think it's just going to blow people's minds when cars drive themselves really well. And I think that in and of itself is incredible. So I mean, I don't think there's much more that I I mean, every time I don't know you guys, every time I tell somebody about Tesla and they have this thing called Autopilot and it, level whatever we're at 2 on the NHTSA scale, and it works now, they're sort of, whoa, that's crazy. I can't even imagine. I mean, they can't even imagine lane keeping and emergency braking, automatic
But
cruise
that's been shipping
control.
for a while, right?
I know that, but people can't even
at Connect,
process that.
right?
And then processing that your car essentially has a brain that mimics the human brain in terms of its ability to adapt and sort of mature and improve over time, to get safer. I mean, that's science fiction for everyone, just
Well,
about.
I mean,
So
not a couple of data points, right? So we know that there is a pending divorce between Mobileye and Tesla.
right,
And so Mobileye continues to supply the IQ3 chip, which is the current chip that's shipping in Tesla Autopilot. But there's always been a question about how much of Autopilot is Mobileye and how much of it is Tesla.
right,
And at TMC Connect, 2 of the sessions were about ADAS, about Autopilot, basically. So there was a researcher from MIT, Lex Fridman, and there was another researcher from Perrone Robotics, Annie Lin, and their presentations are quite interesting. Because a lot of times we've been getting a lot of information from lay people, and from regulators, and from your normal car reviewers, or even the more interesting ones like Alex Roy, right, of the Drive,
right.
talking about it. But we haven't really heard that much in-depth information from actual ADAS researchers,
Right, actual
so
scientists, exactly.
Right, that have some real understanding of how these things are done. As far as Dave's question, I think they're making their own chips. They hire people to make their own chips from PA Semi, from Apple's ARM team, and I think now when we say making their own chips, I don't mean they're physically making them. They'll probably be fabless. They'll have ST Micro or Taiwan Semiconductor, somebody actually make them, but they're going to design their own chips. Now,
Yep.
Now obviously we know NVIDIA's CEO is a big fan of Tesla, and they have their own Drive PX system based around their GPU designs. So what we're seeing here is that there's going to, I think, a differentiation. The hard part, as presented by these speakers, was you can either just go straight to level 4 and not ship level 2 or 3, or you can try the incremental effort from level 2, 3, and try to build upon it and build upon it, build upon it to get to level 4. And there's a big divorce within the research community between the 2 approaches. And matter of fact, some of the disparaging remarks we heard and saw and read about Tesla Autopilot were from people who believe that you should only go straight to level 4. Like, you should not bother with this level 2, 3 crap from their perspective. Now, Elon Musk has come out and said that it might take a while to get to level 4. You could save lives now with level 2,
Right.
level 3 advanced systems.
Yeah, he said it's irresponsible to not use the technology as it exists because it does save lives.
Right. So what I do think, however, is that they are going to make their own Autopilot silicon implementation, which will further differentiate themselves from everybody else. And if you listen to GeoHot, who famously Elon Musk offered him $12 million to replace
Right.
Mobileye, he had a recent video interview on a startup show, a Silicon Valley startup show, where now obviously he has a very biased interpretation and self-promoting. He's promoting his own ADS implementation, but it is interesting as another data point from someone who really does know, and he goes through and rips everybody else, right, and goes over all of that, and he really completely disparaged Mobileye. And so it's interesting to start collect some of these opinions from people who are really in the know versus the people who are just starting to react to it. And I think it will be the first company to really get an all-electric ADAS implementation on the streets is like, you know, the new gold rush, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I think so, because I think honestly, you know, and yeah, and I talked to some people, you know, I'm not going to name names, but at the conference as well, that said, you know, that know the CEO of Mobileye, and you know, basically sort of intimated that he was a little, they thought a little too highly of themselves as sort of the only game in town, and not necessarily in a, but just really that, um, you know, they're more of a stepping stone for a company like Tesla than they are a long-term solution, whereas other companies are, you know, entirely dependent on third-party suppliers for things. So I mean, I can envision basically Elon, once it's proven and everybody wants one, and then he says, all right, I'll give away the, you know, my Autopilot tech to, you know, and maybe he open sources that, but I don't think he does it yet, because I think one of the worst things that could happen is bad implementations of it, by other automakers that people start to hate on, and you know, distrust. I mean, we need Tesla Motors to be the ones to do this, and I think Elon knows that, because just no one else has the internal capability to make this happen this decade. I don't think they just
I'll
don't.
share a couple more thoughts on autonomy. It's interesting on the conference call that Elon said that the hardware is all there right now, and that it's more of a software issue. And yeah, it seems like they are going to make their own chips, you know, or at least design, you know, their own chips. But it seems like he's already counting that as already done or finished, you know, all the equipment and everything. And now it's just a software issue. Yeah, I mean, supposedly, like, you know, Mobileye kind of twisted the story to kind of make Tesla look like irresponsible, you know, and that's why they ended the relationship. For Tesla, they were mostly quiet, but what I heard is actually Tesla wanted more control over what they could do with Mobileye's equipment and chips, but Mobileye, they were kind of resistant. They wanted to kind of work together with as many OEMs as possible at the same time, and kind of like rather than give like, because if you look at it, you know, autonomous driving is basically going to be the chips, right, and the cameras, sensors, all that stuff, and it's going to be the software. And what Tesla basically says is, we got software chops, you know, like we know software, so we just want the hardware from you guys, and we'll basically do our own thing. But that's where the tension I heard was from Mobileye, is they weren't willing to just decouple everything and just say, okay, Tesla, here's the hardware, right? And so Tesla basically said, okay, you guys aren't going to let us, then we're going to, you know, have to do our own thing. What's interesting to me is, I'll pose this question, and I kind of lean toward believing it, is I think autonomous driving, it might be a winner-takes-all field. I think there's a possibility, and here's why I bring up this possibility is it's kind of like Google search, right? When you search for a topic, you don't want to go to 3 or 4 different search engines, right? You just want to go to the best search engine. And that's it, right? You just want to end your search with the best search engine. Google is like, you know, winner takes all, you know, basically. I'm sure there might be like Bing with like 10, 20 or something, whatever percent, but it's like inconsequential compared to, you know, the vast majority just going to Google for search. With autonomous driving, it's like, if one company is better with autonomous driving than another, are you going to risk your life with a lesser company and say, oh yeah, I want to buy that car?
That assumes the distance between the implementations is far. Right?
Yeah, but the thing is, you think that, oh, like, you know, search engines can be similar, but there's always going to be, like, you know, a first place and a second place, like Coke and Pepsi, or in any field, you know, there's always a leader that establishes some type of credibility in what they do. And if Tesla is able to do that, the second place and third place, even though they're cheaper by a few $1,000s, who's going to want to, like, risk their life?
So there are 2 observations that I'd like to share about this area that I learned just in the last 2 weeks, right? Between the interview with GeoHot and the discussions with the MIT researcher, Mr. Friedman. Google is famously one of the major efforts going towards pure level 4 autonomous driving. Like, they don't bother with level 2 or 3 stuff, and hence their vehicle doesn't have steering wheel, you know, all that kind of stuff, and looks dorky. Apparently, the Google implementation is only a part of what a full system would have to look like to actually operate on all roads. Like the Google's implementation would be decent for, say, a bus that, you know, on really highly centimeter by centimeter accurate roads in Silicon Valley in order to get commuters on an autonomous bus to, you know, to and from Google. It works very well for that. But you can't, it's not really designed to be thrown in the middle of anywhere and be able to just look at its sensor data and just drive. Whereas GeoHot and Tesla's implementations are clearly aiming for that, where you could just, you know, you drop it someplace. It could use a high-resolution corrected map, but it doesn't have to use a high-resolution corrected map in order to drive. And so the distance in which Google has to then cover after their level 4 is ready for limited operations is all the ground that Tesla and GeoHot are working on today. And from GeoHot's perspective, he doesn't believe in LiDAR. He doesn't, you know, he's using basically the sensors in which a human has, and a little bit more. But you know, there are all these people who originally said, "Oh, Tesla has to have LiDAR," and Tesla's perspective was, "No, we don't. There are limitations with LiDAR." And GeoHot's perspective is, "No, you don't. There are problems with LiDAR," and they're not. The LiDAR implementations that are cheap are terrible. So it was really interesting to see the actual how the researchers and how the implementers are really thinking about the various implementations. And I think Tesla, and there are a few out there, I think, that will be neck and neck in the running, will do the intelligent machine learning, self-driving like a human approach, which is very different. You know, like BMW showed off a race car running around a track with centimeter by centimeter accurate track. You know, that's not interesting. I mean, they did that like 10 years ago. And there's a reason why they still are not leaders in actually shipping units. That kind of technology will only get you so far.
Yeah, like back to, I mean, to qualify what I said about the winner takes all, I think it's entirely possible that actually Elon understands that and believes that autonomous driving is a winner takes all. What I mean by winner takes all is not 100% of the market. Like Google doesn't have 100% of the market, but Google has, you know, 70, 80% of the market. In the same way, you know, autonomous driving could be the winner takes all in the sense that whoever's first place and has actually a substantial lead. There could be a time where there's like 2 first places. They're just like neck to neck, you know, they're like both really good. But if one company establishes a clear first place with autonomous driving, basically, you know, you're looking at, I think, 70% of the market right there, you know, over time, because at least, you know, because it's a life or death matter, you know, because the responsibility to drive is no longer on the driver themselves. Like the life and death, it's on the car more now, right? It's on the software. So because of that, it's like people aren't going to risk it. That's why I think, you know, Tesla is smart, Elon is smart to make full autonomy one of their top goals, like Model 3, full autonomy. That's it, right? And I think also it explains why Elon thinks that Apple might be coming into the picture too late. It's not because electric cars or cars are difficult to make, or if you're a few years late with a car, that makes a big difference. I don't think that's the real thing. I think it's about autonomy. You know, if you're like 3 or 4 years late with your car with autonomy, so by then Tesla will have, well, not just established its lead, but probably solidified its lead. And here's Apple just trying to get started. It's like almost an impossible barrier. It's like trying to start a search engine right now. You know, Google is just like way too far ahead. And so it could be that Elon is talking about that. You know, it's too late for Apple, possibly
10 billion
because.
Miles.
Well, yeah, but that's just the beginning. You know?
No, I'm just saying, it's just to get to that initial hurdle of 10 billion miles, right? Tesla will likely reach 10 billion miles of ADAS data before anyone else, just because they're using our existing cars to do it.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. I mean,
was going to say that.
As they grow, but you know, that's just that the miles they accrue, the expertise is just going to be exponential. It's like this, you know.
But not clear it's unassailable, I guess, is the real issue. Like, they could have a substantial lead, but they have a substantial lead on electric vehicles. And one of the interesting things to think about is, what would an ADAS, fully autonomous gasoline car look and feel like? Could you do it? Like, what would it mean for a robot to refuel itself with gasoline? And is that materially different than refueling itself with electric? And so there's a whole bunch of that where with the electric it's like a no-brainer. Oh, just plug in a charger. What's the big deal? But when you're talking about liquid fuel for a robot, is that materially different? And so therefore, when you talk in the mid 2020s, if the other auto manufacturers are maybe even close with autonomy, but are far with electric, that might end up still not. They may still be behind because they don't have all the pieces of the pie.
Yeah, I mean, I think that goes to just the inherent superiority of an electric drivetrain, which, I mean, it just is. I think people that it's safer. There's things you can do. There's just mechanical physics of it that make it, more sort of feasible for that. And I agree on the miles. I was going to say that too. I mean, every day Tesla gets further ahead on in the field experience with doing this in real time, and every single mile driven by every single product they've ever sold is making the future of Tesla and its products better. So I think that's amazing.
Yeah.
Can I just pivot a little on this to ask you guys what you think of that Consumer Reports, sort of after, tragically, obviously Josh passed away in Florida, and Consumer Reports was sort of, the blowback, like you should pull Autopilot off the street. It's no longer, okay for you to have beta software out there when human lives are at stake and this and that. I mean, how do you guys think that? I mean, what did you think about that? How do you feel like people? I mean, I sort of in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, we can't afford to make too many mistakes, and we have to set the message on this very carefully. And I sometimes I worry that Elon is too cavalier. I mean, he's a scientist, so he talks. It's not being cold or sort of heartless, even though I think it can come across that way when he's talking about, the loss of a life. I mean, I don't know.
Well,
What
what's
do you guys think
interesting
about
is that report was the crescendo of the criticism. Like
Sure.
that was the absolute peak of all of that fervor that built up to that point. And then right after that, various authors in the traditional automobile space, like car reviewers from Car and Driver and Motor Trend, as well as NHTSA officials, as well as other people, basically said, this is not the thing that you guys are thinking about. Like, Tesla should not be held back because of one death. Give Tesla space to make this happen. It will end up being safer today to have this in the field than not. And so very quickly after that CR recommendation, all of a sudden you got a whole bunch of people that were not necessarily Tesla defenders before, all of a sudden came out and defended Tesla.
Yeah, I mean, I'm torn a bit by it because, in my opinion, what my take is, I thought Consumer Reports is basically saying change the name of Autopilot to make it less, enthusiastic in its, in its sense of meaning, and then second, get an update out where you are more strict with the driver putting your hands on the wheel. Of course, they said, pull the software until you get that update. But overall, I don't think those are too drastic. I think those, they seem like pretty reasonable suggestions. Whether Tesla takes it or not is up to them. But yeah, I do think Autopilot is a very aggressive kind of like enthusiastic name that could, transfer some additional meaning to, rather than driver assist.
Mercedes' name is Drive Pilot.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's true too.
And their ad specifically said our car drives itself.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, that's crazy, but yeah, but I mean,
I'm sorry. If it was called "Do not use this feature," it would still be used. People will do exactly the same thing.
Yeah, but here's where I come in. I think Tesla could do a better job with explaining the limitations of Autopilot, like what it does well, and it does, like it follows cars well, right? Without cars, it's a little trickier, right? It like crossing traffic on a highway. If people would know ahead of time that, oh, there's a limitation to the system, then they would understand how to use it a bit more clearly. But if it's just kind of this vague thing of, oh, put it on, what happens is the more you use it and you're not in an accident, you assume and you learn that, oh, this is trustworthy, right? But I think there is some responsibility on Tesla's part where if the system has some limitations, right, that those limitations are clearly expressed, and the drivers can have some understanding of those limitations.
Unfortunately, Josh's death, that it took Josh's death to make this much clearer to people, and I think it got much clearer to people. I mean, if you own an Autopilot car, you probably had people come to you and say, "Oh my God, you're using Autopilot? Aren't you afraid?" Right? I mean, the blowback has caused a bunch of these discussions, has caused people to reassess it, to pay attention to it. I think it's a necessary part of our human evolution with this technology and through time. Like we had to go through these steps. Someone had to take the arrows.
Yeah, I mean, but here's the thing, like, and this is something that I think Tesla could implement. I mean, but like they could have like before you turn it on, right when you turn it on, you have a list of 10 different areas and from 0 to 10, like driving in traffic, driving behind a car, or even cross traffic or different things. And it just shows like the current state of Tesla's Autopilot is like 3 out of 10 for this field, 5 out of 10 for this field, or 1 out of 10. And when there's updates, it can show, oh yeah, we've increased it by 2 points, this field of following a car. And so people have an understanding of the different areas that Tesla Autopilot does well and doesn't do well. And they could see the updates improving different things. I think to me that's like basic level, especially when you're dealing with a product that's life or death, right? This isn't like a candy bar.
I agree. Yeah.
This isn't like, headphones, electronics. This is your life and death, right? This is people
What is interesting is like in the death of Josh was actually a failure on the automatic emergency braking system. Like that really wasn't the lane keeping, right? It was about the automatic emergency braking system. And if you look at the NHTSA reports on the success of automatic emergency braking systems in general, they talk about something on, I have to go back and look at the exact figure, but something about a 39% reduction in rear end collisions.
Yeah,
what that means is
mandate them.
What that means is that 61% of the time it failed to actually not crash into the car in front of you, and that's considered a dramatic success that should start making AEB systems mandatory.
Right.
I mean, and we're talking only a 39% success rate in terms of lowering crashes by 39% of that type, of the easiest type for AEB to deal with, right? As opposed to this, which was one of the hardest things for AEB to deal with. And so, I mean, if you look through the list of caveats with Subaru's EyeSight system or Mercedes Distronic system, the list is long, and guess what? It looks a lot like Tesla's list. And so, I do agree driver education is still, Tesla could do way more with driver education. They should do way more driver education. But it's actually an industry-wide problem. It's actually, there's AEB been shipping for years, and people still crash.
Yeah, all I'm saying is like the system isn't going to be perfect, but if Tesla or any company understands that there are limitations to the system, those limitations should be expressed, right? And that's, as long as Tesla does that, that's all they can do, right? That's right. To me, that's the best thing they can do. I want to go ahead and we're already at 5 o'clock, so I kind of want to wrap it up. I mean, there were a few comments on the semi and the bus being announced, or kind of events being held next year or so. I'm a big semi truck fan.
Really?
I've shared this in my previous video several months ago, way before the release. I think it's a multi-trillion-dollar industry. It's not about semi trucks. Like, that's not the industry. It's about logistics, shipping goods from point A to point to point B, shipping goods from like ship ports to warehouses, in different cities and within cities. We're talking about like one of the largest industries in the entire world is logistics, shipping. And with autonomous driving, it just completely makes sense that trucks go autonomous. They go fully electric, and Tesla cannot just take out the semi-truck. Like we're not talking about just giving machines for people to drive and do their work. We're talking about Tesla entering a very old school, traditional, bureaucratic, multi-trillion-dollar industry of shipping goods from A to B, and coming in with a totally disruptive, autonomous, electric semi-truck platform, including the back end to order your goods shipped from A to B. And we're talking about Tesla being able to actually, perhaps it has potential to be bigger than whatever they make with cars. I mean, we're talking about logistics, Tesla logistics, right? This is what I've been talking. Actually, go back to my past videos and you'll see this is definitely probably the biggest market that, and I'm glad that Tesla isn't pumping it right now, that they're calling it just a semi-truck, because it's going to take some time, like for trucks to go over. And
there's
so
a difference between short-haul delivery vehicles and long-haul, cross-continental. You got to believe the long-haul stuff is the last things to go this way, right? Like Lightspeed might have more success in that arena than Tesla. The short-haul delivery, absolutely. Is that a difference in your mind?
No, I mean, see, okay, the way to me you have to look at this is you have to look at Tesla going in from more the longer range and Uber coming in from the shorter range. So Uber is a completely logistics company. You can't look at them as like a ride-hailing company. There's no way a ride-hailing company gets like an early valuation of $60 billion. These VCs are looking at Uber as a logistics company, right, clearly. Right? They start from an urban setting of shipping people from point A to point B, and they're moving into shipping goods from point A to point B in an urban setting. Right? That's not where Uber is going to end. Right? Their ambition is crazy, Uber, and they're going to want to be a logistics company, not just for urban settings, but for short, mid, and long distance.
Like food delivery and
I mean, they're ready to do Uber Eats and stuff.
Right.
I mean, trust me, the Uber disruption is just getting started here, right? Tesla, on the other hand, is kind of like going in from the other way. Like, well, their cars. The thing is, they're so late to the party, right? Because Tesla's kind of waiting for the Model 3. They're waiting for full autonomy, for all this stuff. So they're not able to compete with Uber right now, urban-wise. The area that is this blue ocean for Tesla right now is more of like the longer range. I'm not talking about, let's say, West Coast to East Coast right away, but I'm talking about what if Tesla initially starts from Long Beach port, right, and maybe a few other West Coast ports, and is able to ship goods directly from these ports all around the West Coast, right, from Southern California, NorCal, Oregon, Washington, maybe to Canada, and it ships all the way maybe out to Texas or something. Just start out there, and you have battery swap stations all along the way, basically, and you have a limited route, right? You don't have like 100 routes they can take. You just basically have like start out with a few to several key routes with a bunch of battery swap stations, and you can get a ton of these goods shipped from the major West Coast ports to these major cities, at least within a huge region of the US.
It's the same argument for hydrogen, actually, for hydrogen long-range trucking, where you don't need very much. Like, you only need to have hydrogen at a few places. As a result, you have predictable routes.
Exactly, but the key thing is you got to get rid of the driver, right? The driver is costing too much money in the picture. You're talking about a human, person who can't drive.
I think there's a human on board.
They can't drive 24 hours a day. And it costs money to be there. These drivers, they're not cheap either. You've got to get rid of the human element.
An attendant. He's not a driver. He's an attendant. He or she is an attendant, and you might still have a human on board, but not paid as a driver, and doesn't have the duty cycle of a driver.
Yeah, I mean, that's what you do initially. I'm saying that initially you have a person overseeing it and stuff, because the autonomous driving portion isn't perfect, right? But when autonomous driving is perfected, your battery swap stations are all perfected and stuff, it's a no-brainer to get the person out of there. It's just too expensive, right? But with this, you have Tesla entering now one of the most lucrative or biggest markets in the entire world, right now, which is logistics and shipping. They enter it for more of this longer distance trucking, right? And then they're gonna also try the urban stuff with the minibus, but also with ride sharing, etc., right? But you have Tesla, shipping. See, before Tesla was just providing machinery, right? Basically cars to people, right? That's the vision of Tesla. That's the thing. Tesla, the first version, the master plan, was just shipping machinery to people, right? And people do whatever they want to do with the machines, right? Tesla, the second master plan, is not about that. Tesla's second master plan is not about machinery. It's about what you do with that machinery after. Tesla will do it all for you. Basically, Tesla is saying we're doing the machinery plus we're doing everything else that it takes to ship people and to ship goods from point A to point B. And this is like, we're talking about one of the biggest markets in the entire world, and we're going to lead the industry by becoming fully autonomous.
So
our technology.
We're hearing you on your enthusiasm for this, Dave, and I agree. I think though it's important to consider. I mean, this starts to bring up when you talk about Uber has already essentially begun to extinct the taxi cab industry in places all over the world, and I think there are so many regulations about interstate shipping, inter-country ship. I mean, of goods and people too, but goods and heavy. There's safety issue. I mean, I just think about the rules and regulations and the laws and just the cultural impact of something that. I mean, it's already possible to do that today. I mean, if you said, Elon, stop what you're doing, make everybody a Tesla, make an autonomous semi in 6 months, don't do anything else, they could do it. But the question is, it actually is pretty cheap to put a person in a semi. I mean, they don't make that much money, and I mean,
I've known some truckers that it's not cheap.
Yeah, I mean, I do too. I mean, it's not. They make good money, sure, I guess by sort of our standards these days of what human beings should earn. But I mean, I think you begin to get into discussions of what we as a society, how we need to adapt to enable a technology to actually even be possible. And that adaptation would be if you put millions of people out of work through autonomy, what do they do to subsist? What do they? I mean, you'll have an entire multiple entire industries caught up in logistics, global logistics.
But that's beyond Tesla.
I mean, actually, I have a lot of thoughts on that, but I mean, there's pros and cons and there's challenges. And the big thing though is this transition to what I'm calling Tesla logistics. It's going to take a long time. It's not like something that's going to happen over the next few years.
It's also not a core competency of Tesla yet. I mean, that would be new. Tesla as a service does not exist yet. It's an idea.
Actually, the thing is actually to go back to your point of regulations. Actually, it's not that difficult to set up a trucking company. Tesla already has all the licenses because they ship their own goods, from different states. They already have actually a trucking license and a trucking company. They have their own trucks actually already doing their own deliveries of stuff. And so to
get cells from the packs from the Gigafactory to Fremont is going to be. I mean that alone is a direct application of this technology.
Yeah. But anyways, I'll leave it at this because I think we're going to be talking about Tesla logistics for many, many years to come. It's just that I've done a lot of research on this personally, like over the past year, and to me, this is actually the biggest potential for Tesla outside of their cars and outside of basically it's their cars and ride sharing, it's Tesla Energy, the storage, and it's Tesla Logistics. These are the three main multi-trillion-dollar industries that Tesla is aiming for right now, and that's the master plan too. And I don't think many people have caught on to exactly the gravity of what's going on here, but we'll be able to talk about that for many.
The funny thing is that like I feel the same thing about Tesla Energy, that it's also not priced in. It is also you can see it on the
exactly.
It's the one that stands in front of that the one you're talking about. Like Tesla Energy, that vision is more accessible in the next year, the next 2 years, and then Tesla Semi, Tesla Logistics is like after that. Right?
Yeah, I mean, Tesla logistics is definitely, I think, more of a between years 5 and 10 is when it can take off really. To me, Tesla Energy, it's still 2 years away from really taking off. Like people want it to take off this year, next year, etc. But there's too much bureaucracy in the whole power industry. That's my
Yeah, I mean,
opinion.
I think you could say that Tesla Energy makes the optionality of Tesla Energy makes up about 10% of the current share price at most. The optionality of autonomous semis makes up 1% right
Oh,
now.
less than that. No one, no
Yeah,
one gets it.
No one,
but I
yeah.
think, that, as you to your point, I mean, yeah, no sane analyst models in revenues for those things yet, but when you think about it sort of non-traditionally, as just a long-term hold and a shareholder, no other company on the planet is positioned better to capture those markets and disrupt
Yeah.
those markets in a good
Okay,
way.
guys, I need to step up. But actually, Adam, Al MC was asking. He was asking. He wanted to hear your thoughts on macro going forward. If you have any
Oh,
concerns or
I
things like
see that.
that.
Yeah, I think Al
Yeah.
dropped off. Maybe I'll,
Yeah.
I don't know. What's that? Oh, okay.
Do we lose Dave?
I guess we lost Dave. Um, well, yeah, I mean, I don't, I don't know if Al's gonna like go back and watch this. I guess it's just you, me, and Steve here. But if you are Al, I guess I'll give you my like 30-second soundbite. I'm currently positioned for a Hillary Clinton victory. It has in the portfolio that I manage. I study very carefully the political risk. My partners are very concerned about it in the U.S. and abroad, as destabilizing or stabilizing world markets, and particularly U.S. markets, in high beta stocks like things that we think about. I looked at data over time, multiple data over time about what sectors tend to do well in Republican U.S. administrations, in Democratic U.S. administrations, how the overall market does, and essentially concluded that in a Hillary Clinton administration, I think it's wise to be positioned to capture new tech, clean tech, and with a smattering of financials, high value retail, and basically essentially just strong, and maybe a little bit of sort of overseas exposure, but I do that through ETFs. So I don't know. I mean, I think macro, if the U.S. election goes the other way and we have and I'm just gonna be blunt. If Trump wins, then I think the market takes a massive haircut because nobody knows what happens in that new kind of world. It's an unknown. The market doesn't like unknowns. Um, Currently, it's looking like the betting markets are at about 69% chance of Hillary Clinton winning the U.S. election. The poll of polls that I follow, Nate Silver on 538 has a number of statistical models they apply. The least aggressive one has, I believe, about a 60% chance. So those aren't sure thing numbers by any stretch, and a lot can happen between now and November. But that to me is the biggest macroeconomic risk facing U.S. based portfolios and would have a significant bearing on Tesla Motors stock, one way or the other, I believe. But I think it's sort of one of those things where if the world's going to end, you might as well bet on the world not ending anyway, because if the world does end, you're not going to care about it. So that's how we've positioned our portfolio in the broad strokes, from a macro sense. Other things, obviously in the world can flare up and have. I mean, I think there's always Middle East tension. There's Eastern Bloc and Russian tension. There's the China-Taiwan tension. Those are persistent. And then there's just the horrible state of affairs of many South American countries, and endless quantitative easing. So, but Hillary Clinton in her acceptance speech of the nomination made a direct note of a massive scale infrastructure, like FDR level infrastructure project that would focus on clean tech and new technologies to make us sort of
But that
safer.
hinges on
So,
getting some level of Congress going along.
Some of it does, yeah, but there's a lot of data showing that congressional races are a lot more congressional races are up in the air than were previously thought, given the sort of non-traditional campaigning of or non-existent campaigning of Republican,
Don't you think?
basically Donald Trump.
Don't you think short term the market all of a sudden decided that things are not that bad, and we Nasdaq shot up, S&P shot up, and we might get
Yeah,
a small
I mean,
haircut just because we're maybe over exuberant over the data, but
sure. I mean, you can always get a small
the U.S.
haircut. I
economy
think,
is strong. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I think the market is beginning to is in the process of pricing that in. I don't think it's completed, but yes, I do. I think that the market is betting smartly on things being okay, essentially, from a fairly. I mean, honestly, I sort of view Hillary Clinton as fairly middle of the road in some ways. I think some people view her as extremely liberal. I don't. I think she's not. I think she's more centrist and pragmatist in her outlook on things. I think she has a lot of progressive ideas, but yeah. So anyway, that's sort of my take on that. I don't know if Al's even going to watch this, but or if that's what he wanted, but
Well, we're ending this call at Tesla after hours dropped to 224.10, which is really nothing.
yeah.
I still think that we could slide
Oh sure, we
tomorrow.
could.
Um,
But
but
I
I
think the
think
after hours action was
right.
so weak that I don't see it.
The reaction of the bear, your typical bear, is exactly what you would expect. They
Right.
had additional ammo for their point of view, and we have additional ammo for our point of view.
Right.
No,
So sort
nothing
of
was
range
decided this
bound.
quarter, right?
Yep.
So uh, uh, as far as they're concerned, they think that Tesla is still losing more money per vehicle, which is absurd. But from
Right.
their perspective, that's what's feeding their confidence. And so I don't think that we get a short squeeze off of this.
No, no, I don't either. I don't think this is like any kind of upside surprise. I don't think this is a short squeeze. I don't think it's a long squeeze either, though. I think it's a, I mean, but obviously we could be wrong, but I think it's a kind of a wait and see on many sides. Now, I mean, there could be
We
margin
could
calls.
slide back into the 240s, 250s. It's really not that far away,
Well,
right?
right, and if
Both
there's margin calls
210,
on
two teens and 250s are really not that far away either direction.
yeah, so I have right now the borrowing cost of Tesla Motors is 17%. It's astronomically high price to short Tesla right now. So you know this, Bill. I'm making a bit of money on that. Which is, but I mean, honestly, it's there's there. I haven't seen the latest short interest, but I do know that at least at Interactive Brokers, the fee rate being 70% is just that is not sustainable indefinitely if the stock goes no is just middle of the road range bound, and that could trigger a short squeeze if people get margin calls if they just start eating that 70%, day after day after day after week after month, losing money as Tesla doesn't go down enough to justify their short expenditures. I mean that could propel us up. So
I mean, we
it's
could go
possible.
higher just on the back of shorts covering because they expected this to really crush Tesla, and as much as the numbers were in their favor in some ways, it wasn't enough to for them to stay in it. Obviously, the
Right.
ones that are really long that have been the ones that write articles all the time, they're not going to change their tune based on this data. But
Yeah.
the
I
ones
mean, to some
that
extent,
bought
that's
in
just
based on
noise.
that recommendation is going to be like, well, that's it.
Right.
you know,
Right.
and so I still think that we may still get a short-term drop, and I'll see that as a buying opportunity, not for anything short-term, but a buying opportunity for position for Q3, Q4 into next year. And right now, it's still options prices are really expensive for 2017.
Yeah. I
Actually
don't.
December on, especially January 2017 is really expensive right now.
Right. Well, that's a lot will be known by then theoretically, or a lot more than today. So
Right.
yeah, I mean, I think that's why they're so expensive. But I mean, yeah, I'd be a buyer of more. if we dip significantly, sure, I think it's just like an easy buy. If we suddenly shoot up to 280, then I might be like, whoa, that's time to take some profits. But so I don't think there's much chance of us going, dropping into the hundreds or up to the all-time highs anytime in the next week. But
Now,
again,
the Solar City arbitrage right now is at
Yeah.
221
Yeah.
equivalent.
Yeah.
And so at 221 equivalent, that's not that bad either.
Yeah.
No, it's not.
My take on Tesla's stock price is short term it's a difficult stock because they're not beating guidance. I mean, we're talking about a company that's been a laggard, basically, missing guidance mostly, for the past, several quarters, and it's tough to go on calls or leaps with a stock that continues to miss guidance in the short term. But long term, like year, 2, 3, 4, 5 years out, like if your time frame is a year out or more, long term, like it's a fantastic company because you have Model 3 risk. In my opinion, the design is out, it looks fantastic. The demand has been confirmed, right? You have all the pieces that are coming together with the Gigafactory and suppliers, Panasonic raising their money, etc. Like all the pieces are starting to come together where it's like the risk of Tesla compared to a year ago or 2 years ago, right? Like you didn't know anything about the Model 3, right? But now you've seen it, right? You've seen the Gigafactory. It's like you have 400,000 orders or more, etc. It's like Tesla is like long-term wise, fantastic company. They have these new blue ocean multi-trillion-dollar industries with Tesla Energy and Tesla Logistics. So yeah, fantastic. So, but short term, man, it's tough when a company continues to over-promise their quarterly guidance and doesn't make it. Yeah, it's tough.
Yep. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you,
All right.
guys.
Okay, we're gonna end. Next week we're gonna have Andrea James on, so you can go to TMC look for the info. All right, signing out.
Awesome.
Thanks, guys. We'll see you.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.